stood alone at the large window of the command station. She watched the stars move slowly past the glass. They looked cold and far away, like tiny pieces of ice floating in black water. She had been standing here for a long time. She came here often now, ever since the day her world fell apart. It had been 437 days since the starship Horizon's Edge was destroyed in the nebula. The mission was supposed to be simple. The ship was escorting a group of diplomats through dangerous space, but something went wrong. The ship exploded. Everyone died. Had been on that ship. Closed her silver eyes and took a slow breath. Her people, they were tall and thin. Their skin was pale blue and glowed softly in the dark. They were known throughout the galaxy for being calm and logical. They did not show emotions. They did not fall in love. They believed such things were weaknesses that clouded the mind. But had changed her. She met him 3 years ago during a diplomatic meeting between humans, and he was a pilot, young and full of energy. He smiled too much and talked too loudly and asked too many questions. At first, found him annoying. Humans were strange creatures. They laughed and cried and hugged each other for no reason. They made decisions based on feelings instead of facts. It was all very confusing. But was patient with her. He explained things she did not understand. He told her about music and poetry and the way humans felt when they watched a sunset. He held her hand one evening and asked if she felt anything. She said no, but that was a lie. She felt something. She just did not have a word for it. Over time, that feeling grew. It was warm and strange and sometimes painful, called it love. Had never experienced anything like it. Her people did not believe in love. They chose partners based on logic and genetic compatibility. But this was different. This was messy and beautiful and terrifying. Taught her how to laugh. He taught her how to cry. He read her human poems late at night until she fell asleep with her head on his shoulder. He told her she was beautiful, and for the first time in her 200 years of life, believed it. Then he was taken from her. The Galactic Council announced that there were no survivors from the Horizon's Edge. Attended the memorial service on Earth. She stood in the back, watching humans weep and hold each other. They did not understand why it was there. Her people did not grieve. They were not supposed to care about death in this way. But cared. She cared so much that it felt like something inside her chest was breaking. She returned to the command station after the memorial and tried to continue her work, but everything felt empty. The stars looked dimmer. Food had no taste. Sleep brought no rest. She moved through her days like a ghost, doing what was expected of her but feeling nothing. No, that was not true. She felt everything, she just could not show it. 437 days. That was how long she had carried this pain. Her people would say she was being foolish. They would tell her to forget the human and move on. Attachment was illogical. Grief was a waste of energy, but could not forget. She did not want to forget. Had shown her what it meant to be alive, truly alive. And now that he was gone, she felt like a part of her had died with him. Her communicator beeped softly, looked down at the small device on her wrist. A message had arrived from an unknown source. The signal was encrypted with old human military codes. Strange. She almost deleted it. Messages from unknown sources were usually spam or attempts to steal information. But something made her stop. Something made her open it. The message was short, just one line of text on the screen. I'm still here, Theta Station, come alone. Her breath caught in her throat. She read the words again, and again. Her hands began to shake. This was impossible. This had to be some kind of trick. Someone was playing a cruel joke on her. But then she saw the signature code at the bottom of the message. It was a series of numbers that meant nothing to anyone else in the galaxy. But those numbers meant everything. They were the date she and first held hands. It was their secret. A private joke between them. Had laughed when he created the code. He said it was romantic. Had not understood what that meant at the time, but she understood now. No one else knew that code, no one except. Stared at the message. Her silver eyes were wide. Her heart was beating so fast she could hear it in her ears. We're not supposed to feel hope. Hope was dangerous. Hope led to disappointment and pain. But felt it anyway, a small flame flickering in the darkness of her chest. What if he was alive? What if it somehow survived the explosion? What if he had been out there all this time, waiting for a chance to contact her? She knew it was probably a trap. She knew she should report this message to her superiors and let them investigate. That was the logical thing to do, the safe thing. But was done being logical, had taught her that some things were more important than safety. Some things were worth the risk. She made her decision in that moment. She would go to Theta Station. She would find out the truth. And if there was even the smallest chance that was alive, she would bring him home. Turned away from the window and walked toward the door. For the first time in 437 days, she felt something other than grief. She felt hope. Walked through the corridors of the command station with purpose. Her soft blue skin glowed faintly in the dim lights. Others passed her and nodded politely, but she did not stop to talk. She had no time for conversation. Every minute felt precious now. She went to the ship bay and requested a small scout vessel. The officer in charge looked at her with confusion. Had never requested a personal ship before. In 200 years of service, she had always followed the rules. She had always done what was expected. "May I ask the purpose of your journey?" the officer said. "Personal leave," replied. Her voice was steady, but inside she was trembling. "I have earned this right. I am taking it now." The officer checked her records. It was true. Had never used her personal leave. Not once. She had accumulated more free days than almost anyone on the station. The officer could not refuse her. "Very well," he said. "The ship will be ready within the hour." Waited. The hour felt like a year. She paced back and forth in the loading area, her mind racing with thoughts and fears. What if the message was fake? What if someone had found out about the secret code and was using it against her? What if she arrived at Theta Station and found nothing but emptiness and disappointment? But what if was really there? That thought kept her moving. That thought gave her strength. When the ship was ready, climbed inside and started the engines. The vessel was small but fast. It had enough fuel to reach Theta Station and return. She programmed the coordinates and launched into space without looking back. Theta Station was located at the edge of known space. It was an old outpost that had been abandoned after the war many years ago. No one went there anymore. It was too far from everything, too isolated, too dangerous. The perfect place to hide. The journey would take 3 days at maximum speed. 3 days alone with her thoughts. Pushed the engines as hard as they could go. The ship hummed around her as stars streaked past the windows. She did not sleep. She could not sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw his face. She remembered the first time he smiled at her. They were at a formal dinner, surrounded by diplomats and officials. Everyone was being serious and polite, but looked at her from across the table and grinned like they were sharing a secret joke. Did not understand why, but she felt something warm spread through her chest. She remembered the night he read poetry to her. They were sitting on the observation deck of his ship, looking out at the stars. He had a book of old Earth poems that had belonged to his grandmother. He read them slowly, explaining the meaning of each one. Listened carefully, trying to understand why humans cared so much about words arranged in pretty patterns. "This one is about love," said, turning to a new page. "It says that love is like a fire that burns inside you. It can keep you warm, but it can also destroy you." "That sounds dangerous," said. Laughed. "It is dangerous, but it's also the most wonderful thing in the universe. Haven't you ever been in love?" Shook her head. "My people do not experience love. We form partnerships based on logical compatibility." "That sounds lonely," said softly. Did not reply, but later that night, Lying awake in her quarters, she wondered if he was right. She wondered if her entire life had been lonely without her knowing it. She remembered the morning told her he loved her. They were walking through a garden on one of the diplomatic stations. Flowers from 100 different worlds grew in neat rows, filling the air with strange and beautiful smells. Stopped suddenly and turned to face her. "I need to tell you something," he said. His face was serious. "I love you. I know your people think that's foolish. I know you might not feel the same way, but I can't keep it inside anymore. I love you." Did not know what to say. She had no training for this situation, no protocol to follow. She stood there in silence, looking at this strange human who had somehow become the most important person in her life. "You don't have to say it back," said quickly. "I just wanted you to know." But did say it back. Not that day. It took her several weeks to understand what she was feeling, but eventually she found the words. She went to and told him that she loved him too, and the smile on his face was brighter than any star she had ever seen. Now, flying through the darkness of space, held onto that memory like a lifeline. She had spent 14 months believing she would never see that smile again. 14 months of emptiness and pain. But now there was hope, small and fragile but real. On the third day, Theta Station appeared on her sensors. It was dark and silent, drifting slowly through space like a dead thing. No lights, no signals, no signs of life. Felt fear crawl up her spine. What if she was too late? What if had been here but was already gone? What if he was dead after all and the message had been sent by someone else using his code? She pushed the fear away. She had come too far to turn back now. Guided her ship toward the station's docking port. The metal groaned as the clamps connected. She powered down the engines and sat in silence for a moment, preparing herself for whatever waited inside. Then she stood up, grabbed her weapon, and opened the door. The station was cold and dark. The air smelled old and stale. Activated the light on her suit and stepped forward into the unknown. Somewhere in this abandoned place, the truth was waiting for her. She was going to find it, no matter what it cost. Moved slowly through the dark corridors of Theta Station. Her weapon was raised and ready. Her eyes searched every shadow. The only sound was her own breathing and the soft hum of her suit's life support system. The station was old and broken. Rust covered the walls. Cables hung from the ceiling like dead vines. Dust floated in the beam of her light. No one had been here for many years. At least, that was what it looked like. But someone had sent her that message. Someone was here. Checked her scanner. It showed faint life signs coming from the central hub of the station. One person, just one. Her heart beat faster. Could it really be him? She walked through empty rooms and abandoned hallways. She passed old equipment covered in dust and chairs that had not been sat in for decades. The silence was heavy and thick, pressing against her from all sides. Then she reached the central hub. It was a large circular room with a high ceiling. Old computer screens lined the walls, all of them dark and dead. In the center of the room there was a support beam, and sitting against that beam, wrapped in torn blankets and dirty clothes, was a man. Stopped, her breath caught in her throat. The man had dark hair that had grown long and messy. His face was thin and tired. A rough bandage was wrapped around his left arm, spotted with old blood. He looked broken and exhausted, like he had been through hell and barely survived. But it was him, it was. He looked up when she entered. His eyes went wide with surprise and relief. And then he smiled. That same smile she had been dreaming about for 14 months. That same smile that had changed her entire life. "You came," he said. His voice was rough and weak, but it was the most beautiful sound had ever heard. Her weapon fell from her hands. It clattered against the metal floor, but she did not care. She ran across the room and dropped to her knees in front of him. Her hands were shaking as she reached out to touch his face. He was real. He was solid and warm and alive. This was not a dream. This was not a trick. was here, right in front of her. "They said you were dead," she whispered. Her voice was trembling. "The council said there were no survivors. I believed them. I mourned you. I thought I would never see you again." Reached up and touched her cheek. His fingers were rough and calloused, but his touch was gentle. "I'm sorry," he said. "I wanted to contact you. Every day I wanted to send a message, but it was too dangerous. There were people looking for me, bad people. I had to stay hidden until it was safe." 14 months, said. "I was alone for 14 months. I felt like a part of me was missing, like someone had cut out a piece of my heart." Something wet rolled down her cheek, touched it with her finger and stared at it in confusion. Water. She was crying. Did not cry. Their bodies were not supposed to produce tears from emotion, but here she was, crying like a human. Wiped the tear away with his thumb. His own eyes were shining. "I thought about you every single day," he said. "When things got bad, when I wanted to give up, I thought about you. You're the reason I survived. I kept telling myself I had to get back to you. I had to see you one more time." Pulled him into her arms. She held him tight against her chest, feeling his heartbeat through his thin shirt. He was so fragile, so weak, but he was alive. Against all odds, against everything the universe had thrown at him, he was still alive. "I was so angry," said into his shoulder. "After you died, I was angry at everything, at the universe for taking you, at myself for not being there to protect you, at my own people for teaching me that love was a weakness." She pulled back and looked into his eyes. "But love is not a weakness. It is the strongest thing I have ever felt. It kept me going when I wanted to give up. It brought me here to you. My people were wrong about so many things." Smiled through his tears. "I always knew you were special. From the first moment I saw you. You were so serious and proper, but I could see something else underneath. Something beautiful trying to get out." "You helped it get out," said. "You changed me. You showed me how to feel." She held his face in her hands and pressed her forehead against his. They stayed like that for a long moment, breathing together, feeling each other's warmth. "I will never leave you again," said softly. "I promise." "And I will never let anyone take you from me," replied. "Whatever happens next, we face it together." Nodded slowly. His smile faded slightly and a shadow passed over his face. "There's something I need to tell you," he said, "about what happened to the horizon's edge, about why I've been hiding." Pulled back and looked at him carefully. "Tell me." "The ship wasn't destroyed by this," said. His voice was low and serious. "It was sabotaged. Someone from inside the Galactic Council wanted everyone on that ship dead. I saw evidence before the explosion. I barely escaped with my life, and I've been running ever since." Felt a cold anger building in her chest. Someone had done this on purpose. Someone had tried to kill the man she loved, and they had let her believe he was dead for over a year. "Do you have proof?" she asked. Reached into his pocket and pulled out a small data chip. "Everything I found is on here. Names, dates, communications. Enough to expose the whole conspiracy." Took the chip and held it carefully. This small piece of technology was more dangerous than any weapon. It could bring down powerful people. It could change everything. But first, they had to survive. "We need to leave," said. "Now, if they know you're alive, they'll come looking for you." Nodded. "I know. That's why I waited so long to contact you. But I couldn't hide forever. I needed help. I needed you." Helped him to his feet. He was weak and unsteady, but he could walk. That was enough. She put his arm around her shoulder and supported his weight. "My ship is docked nearby," she said. "Can you make it?" "With you beside me," smiled. "I can make it anywhere." Together, they started walking toward the docking bay. Did not know what waited for them outside this station. She did not know if they would survive the next hour or the next day. But she knew one thing for certain. She had found her heart, and she would fight with everything she had to keep him safe. They were halfway to the docking bay when heard it, a low rumbling sound that made the walls vibrate. She stopped and listened carefully, felt her body go tense. "What is it?" he asked. "Ships," said, "multiple ships approaching the station." She looked at her scanner. 3 vessels were coming toward them at high speed. They were military class, fast and heavily armed. Someone had tracked her here, or someone had been watching Theta Station all along, waiting for to make contact. "They found me," said. His face went pale. "I was so careful, I waited so long, but they still found me." "Who are they?" asked the. "No," shook his head. "Human military. The same people who destroyed my ship. They've been hunting me for months. They know what I have and they can't let that information get out." The station shuddered as the ships docked at different points. Could hear the metal groaning under the pressure of the clamps. They had maybe 5 minutes before soldiers started pouring through the corridors. "Can you run?" she asked. Nodded grimly. "I'll have to." Picked up her weapon and checked the charge. It was full. She had enough shots to deal with a small group of enemies, but not an entire military force. They would have to be smart. They would have to be fast. "Stay behind me," she said. "We go straight to my ship, no stopping." They moved quickly through the dark corridors, limped beside her, pushing through his pain and exhaustion, kept her weapon raised and her senses alert. Her blue skin glowed softly in the darkness, making her an easy target. But there was nothing she could do about that now. They turned a corner and came face to face with 3 soldiers in black armor. The soldiers raised their weapons, shouting commands. Did not hesitate. She fired 3 times in rapid succession. Each shot found its target. The soldiers fell before they could pull their triggers. Stared at her in shock. "I didn't know you could shoot like that." "There are many things you don't know about me," said. She grabbed his hand and pulled him forward. "Come, there will be more." They ran through the station, dodging debris and jumping over fallen equipment. Behind them could hear more soldiers entering the corridors. Voices shouted orders. Boots pounded against metal floors. The hunters were closing in. Rounded another corner and nearly ran into a squad of 6 soldiers. She pushed behind a support beam and opened fire. Her shots were precise and deadly, but there were too many enemies. She had to retreat, pulling with her down a side passage. "This way," she said. "There's another route to the docking bay." They ran through a maintenance tunnel, ducking under pipes and climbing over broken machinery. His lungs burned and her legs ached, but she did not slow down. She could feel struggling beside her, his breath coming in painful gasps, but he kept moving. He refused to give up. They emerged from the tunnel near the docking bay. Ship was just ahead, waiting for them like a beacon of hope. But standing between them and the ship were a dozen soldiers, arranged in a defensive formation with weapons pointed directly at them. Stopped, her weapon was running low on charge. Even if she was the best shot in the galaxy, she could not defeat 12 enemies with only a few shots remaining. "Put down your weapon," the lead soldier commanded. He was tall and broad with a face that showed no emotion. "Surrender the fugitive and you will not be harmed." "He is not a fugitive," said. Her voice was cold and steady. "He is a witness. He knows what your commanders did to the horizon's edge. He knows about the murder of innocent people." The soldier's expression did not change. "That information is classified. It cannot be allowed to spread. Put down your weapon. This is your final warning." Looked at, he was pale and exhausted, barely able to stand. But his eyes were clear and determined. He gave her a small nod. "Do what you have to do," he said quietly. "I trust you." Those words gave strength. She turned back to the soldiers and made a decision. A crazy, dangerous, impossible decision. She dropped her weapon. The soldiers relaxed slightly, thinking she had surrendered, but was not surrendering. She was waiting. In the moment that the soldiers lowered their guard, moved faster than any of them could react. She was across the room in 3 strides, her hand closing around the lead soldier's throat. She used him as a shield, grabbing his weapon with her free hand. The other soldiers hesitated, afraid to shoot their commander. That hesitation cost them everything. Fired the stolen weapon in a wide arc, taking down 4 soldiers before they could respond. The others scrambled for cover, but they were confused and disorganized. Moved through them like a storm, striking and shooting with perfect precision. In less than 30 seconds, all 12 soldiers were on the ground. Stood in the middle of the fallen enemies, breathing hard. Her hands were trembling. She had never killed so many people before. She had never known she was capable of such violence, but she had done it. For love. Said softly, he was staring at her with wonder and something like fear. That was necessary. Finished. She walked back to him and took his hand. Let's go, more will come. They ran to her ship, opened the hatch and helped inside. He collapsed into the co-pilot's seat, completely exhausted, sealed the door and started the engines. Outside, she could see more soldiers running toward the docking bay. She did not wait for clearance. She released the docking clamps and launched the ship into space at full speed. Warning lights flashed on her console. The military ships were pursuing them. They were faster and more heavily armed than her small scout vessel, but knew this region of space. She knew the asteroid fields and the nebulas and the places where sensors could not reach. She pushed her ship into a dense asteroid field, weaving between rocks the size of buildings. The military ships tried to follow, but they were too big and too slow. One of them clipped an asteroid and fell behind, damaged. Kept flying, pushing deeper into the field. Her heart was pounding, her hands were steady. She was alive, and she was not going to let anyone take that away. After an hour of dodging and hiding, the pursuing ships finally gave up. Watched them turn away on her sensors, retreating to report their failure. She let out a long breath and leaned back in her seat. Her body was shaking with exhaustion and relief. We made it, she said. Reached over and took her hand. His grip was weak, but his smile was bright. You were amazing, he said. I've never seen anything like that. Looked at their joined hands. Blue skin against brown. 2 different species, 2 different worlds, connected by something stronger than logic or reason. Where do we go now? Asked. Thought for a moment. They could not go back to space. They could not go to human territories. The conspiracy reached too far, touched too many powerful people. They needed to find somewhere safe, somewhere beyond the reach of those who wanted them dead. The outer territories, she said finally. Neutral space. There are places there where no one asks questions. We can hide while we figure out our next move. Nodded slowly. Together. Squeezed his hand. Together. She set a course for the edge of the galaxy and let the stars carry them into the unknown. 3 weeks had passed since their escape from Theta Station. 3 weeks of running, hiding, and healing. And had found a small moon called 7 at the very edge of the galaxy. It was a trading post, a place where travelers and merchants came from all corners of the universe. No one here asked about your past. No one cared where you came from or what you were running from. It was the perfect place to disappear. They rented a small room above a food shop. It was not much, just a bed and a table and a window that looked out over the dusty streets. But it was safe, it was quiet, and they were together. That was all that mattered. Had recovered much of his strength. Good food and rest had brought color back to his face and energy back to his body. The wound on his arm was healing well. He smiled more now, laughed more. Every day watched him become a little more like the man she had fallen in love with. During their time on 7, had sent copies of evidence to journalists and investigators across multiple star systems. She used encrypted channels and anonymous contacts, making sure the information could not be traced back to them. The story was spreading now, like a fire that could not be stopped. Reports were appearing on news feeds everywhere. People were asking questions about the destruction of the horizon's edge. High-ranking military officials were being investigated. Some had already resigned. Others were facing criminal charges. The conspiracy that had tried to bury the truth was falling apart. Watched the news with a mix of satisfaction and sadness. All those people who died on my ship, he said one evening. Maybe now their families will finally know the truth. Put her hand on his shoulder. You did this. You survived when they wanted you dead. You kept that evidence safe. Because of you, justice is being served. Shook his head. I couldn't have done it without you. If you hadn't come to Theta Station, I would have died there. You saved me. We saved each other, she said softly. On their third week on 7, and walked to a ridge overlooking the trading post. It was evening, and the sky was filled with colors she had never seen before. This moon had 2 suns, and when they set together, the sky turned shades of purple and gold and deep red. They stood side by side, watching the light fade and the stars appear. The air was warm and smelled of strange flowers. In the distance, they could hear music playing from one of the shops below. It's beautiful here, said. Yes, agreed. Very different from we do not have sunsets like this on. Our planet is always covered in clouds. Looked at her curiously. Do you miss it, your home? Thought about the question carefully. She thought about the cold halls of the command station, the endless meetings and reports, the life she had lived for 200 years before meeting. It all felt so far away now, like a dream she had woken up from. I miss some things, she said honestly, but I do not miss the loneliness. I did not know I was lonely until I met you. I thought that was just how life was supposed to be, quiet, empty, logical. She turned to face him. My people believe that love is a weakness, she continued. They teach us from birth that emotions cloud our judgment and lead to bad decisions. For most of my life, I believed them. I thought they were right. And now, asked gently. Smiled. It was still strange for her to smile, even after all this time. Her face was not designed for it the way human faces were, but had taught her that smiles did not have to be perfect to be beautiful. Now I know they were wrong, she said. Love is not a weakness. It is the strongest thing I have ever experienced. When I thought you were dead, that love kept me alive. It gave me a reason to wake up each morning, even when everything felt hopeless. And when I received your message, that love gave me the courage to risk everything to find you. She reached out and touched his face, feeling the warmth of his skin against her cool fingers. I spent 14 months believing I would never feel this again, she said. I spent 14 months empty and broken, but now I understand something. The pain I felt was proof that what we have is real. Only something precious can hurt that much when it is lost. His eyes were shining with tears. He took her hands in his and held them gently. Where I come from, he said, we have a saying, love conquers all. I used to think it was just a pretty phrase, something people said to make themselves feel better. But after everything we've been through, I believe it now. I really believe it. Nodded slowly. I believe it too. They stood together as the suns finished setting and the stars filled the sky. Millions of tiny lights, scattered across the darkness like diamonds on black cloth. Somewhere out there, wars were being fought and empires were rising and falling. The galaxy was vast and dangerous and full of unknown things. But here, on this small moon at the edge of everything, none of that mattered. What happens now? Asked. Looked at him and felt a warmth in her chest that she had learned to recognize as happiness. True happiness, not the pale satisfaction her people called contentment. Now we live, she said simply. We find a place in this galaxy where we can be together. We build a life. We wake up each morning and choose each other again. Smiled. That sounds perfect. It does, agreed. Though I should warn you, I know nothing about building a life. I have spent 200 years following orders and completing missions. This is all very new to me. That's okay, said, laughing softly. I'll teach you, just like I taught you about poetry and sunsets and holding hands. And I will teach you about patience and discipline and eating your vegetables, replied. Made a face. I was afraid you'd say that. They laughed together, the sound carrying across the ridge and out into the darkening sky. It was a small sound, easily lost in the vastness of the universe. But too, it was everything. She had spent her whole life being told that emotions were dangerous, that love made you vulnerable, that opening your heart to another person was the greatest mistake you could make. But standing here watching the stars appear one by one, she knew the truth. Love did not make you weak. Love made you strong. It gave you something to fight for, something to protect, something to live for. Had shown her what it meant to be truly alive, and she would spend the rest of her days showing him how grateful she was. She leaned against him, and he put his arm around her shoulders. Two beings from different worlds, bound by something that no one could explain or understand. "I love you," said quietly. "I will love you for as long as I exist." Kissed the top of her head, "And I love you, forever and always." Above them, the stars burned bright and eternal, and somewhere in that vast expanse of light and darkness, a new story was beginning. Their story. Together,